All these other incredible things are happening in the world. I listen to talk radio. I watch the news. All they talk about is the oil spill. And a lot of times, if it's Anna Nicole Smith or O.J. Simpson or Michael Jackson, it's artificial media hype because my callers to my show aren't calling in about it. Because most of the time, we just open the phones up and people can call in them with whatever issue they want. And normally if something, people aren't calling in about Marinus Vanderloob. People aren't calling in about the other media hype that's going on, but they are calling in about this oil spill when I'm not even covering that subject. And they're getting more and more angry. But what I'm getting angry at is hearing Jindal and others keep whining and saying the feds won't let us do this. It's called the 10th Amendment, 9th Amendment. It's time for them to push the feds aside. And if some BP employees pull up and say, we've got federal authority, and they start trying to push people around, I mean, you know, it needs to stop.
Yeah. The thing is, Alex, you have to look at the history of the Green movement to understand that there is nothing that Greenies like better than a nice, juicy oil spill. And the reason they like a nice, juicy oil spill is because it presents them with ready-made images of seagulls, you know, seabirds covered in black. It gives them a sort of excuse for audiences to circumvent thought and really feel about how awful, how bad oil is. And I'll give you an example of this. You know Earth Day, that event that was founded in 1970 by a US sort of eco-tard senator called, I think, Gaylord Nelson, was it? That was Earth Day, which was the birth of the modern environmental movement, was inspired by the Santa Barbara oil spill of 1969. So you see, every time there's an oil spill, the Greens are secretly laughing because it's their perfect excuse to advance their agenda. And this latest incident is no exception.
Well, let me ask you that then. I mean, I'm saying all the evidence points towards false flag. I'm not sure that's the case, but more and more it appears that there's some hanky-panking going on. Bare minimum, they're doing everything they can to let it continue to pour. I mean, at your gut level, James, are you starting to think something's rotten in the state of the Gulf?
Look, my immediate reaction when I read a bit about it was, yeah, that there was some kind of sabotage involved. But I've got no proof of that. It could just be you know, cock up rather than conspiracy. I mean, of course they've got the motive to do this.
Well, why did Obama say we're going to send SWAT teams at first? Maybe it was some Green Movement organization. Why did this happen a month after he approved of drilling?
Yeah. As I said, there are lots of people out there who would have cause to do this kind of thing. I still believe, you know, having talked to people who work in the oil industry, that it would be quite hard to sabotage a thing like this. So I think it's still more like to be an accident. Either way, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the way it's being abused, exploited by Obama and the Green movement to advance their agenda, which in my book is a very sinister agenda. And can we put this oil spill in perspective? During the Second World War, 5 million tons of petroleum were spilled in the Atlantic by tankers sunk by Nazi submarines between 1942 and 1945. So averaged over 1,000 days, the loss is equivalent to 2 to 5 times the oil now spilt in the Gulf of Mexico every day for the duration of the war. So, you know... Yeah,
those wolf packs were sinking sometimes 20 ships in one day.
Yeah, and unfortunately there were no green eco convoys to be torpedoed at the same time, because that would have done us all an enormous favour. But they weren't around in those days. People had bigger issues to worry about.
I tell you, where do you see this going? I mean, Obama has said he wants a new tax to pay for the Gulf, but it's going to be a new carbon tax on everybody's gasoline.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is the real tragedy about this tragedy, which is that up until this point, Obama's cap and trade was dead in the water. Nobody in the Senate was going to vote for this nonsense because they saw that, you know, how unpopular the healthcare, Obamacare was, and they weren't going to take the same risk twice. Suddenly, there's a glimmer of hope that Obama might be able to advance this crazy cap and trade tax, which is going to tax every American for for the amount of CO2 they produce. They're going to tax industry. They're going to tax individuals through their
and he's
energy bills.
He's openly coupled that legislation to this, and is selling it now as a oil cleanup bill when it's the same legislation.
Yeah, well, crisis opportunity. I mean, go figure.
James, stay there. I want to continue to flesh this out with you and take calls from listeners specifically on the oil spill, on the carbon tax and gas tax legislation, and what the public out there thinks is behind this. And your questions for James Delingpole, jamesdelingpole.com, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. James, about a year before Obama got in office, you were already speaking out against him, and you could see that he was the heir apparent. And then right after he got elected, you had your book out about Obamaland. I mean, he really is scary because this isn't just some corrupt Richard Nixon doing bad things, and it's not some George Herbert Walker Bush, launching, wars, which is bad enough. I mean, this guy is really trying to overthrow the government, trying to overthrow our system. I mean, Elena Kagan, they're blocking most of her papers, but the papers we've gotten from just a few years ago say ban the Second Amendment, ban private property, ban free speech. You've got all these White House czars saying ban free speech. You've got the FTC saying ban free speech whenever we want. I mean, we are literally becoming the Soviet Union here, and I guess so is England to a great respect. I mean, what is it like to actually watch this happening?
I say to you, welcome to the suck, because, we have been experiencing this problem for, we've just lived under 13 years of socialism under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. We belong to the EU SSR. The European Union is effectively a milder version of the old Soviet Union. It's all about regulation by unelected bureaucrats. The reason I wrote that book, Welcome to Obamaland, is I knew your future. I could see it coming because I'd already experienced it. I know how socialists work, and I know that President Obama is a socialist, and he's got an administration stuffed with people even worse than socialists. Particularly people like John Holdren, Carol Browner. Half your Van Jones, for example. These are the kind of people who do not like concepts like liberty. They do not like the American way, because the American way is about self-determination. It is about, personal responsibility. And these people do not believe in that kind of stuff. They believe in big government. They believe in control. The more control, the better. And, until you get rid of Obama, and pray God that you do, you are going to see more and more of this stuff happening.
Well, we now have set up debtor prisons again in the U.S. The Star Tribune reports a woman arrested for a non-crime for an unpaid $250 debt. Here's another one at the main Veterans Cemetery in Virginia. They've put up a huge plaque of Joseph Stalin. In fact, I'll give PrisonPlanet.tv viewers a document cam shot of this while James is talking about it. There's a Wall Street Journal article today saying that Americans who don't want to be strip searched on top of the naked body scanners in front of people are vain. And so the control freaks, call them socialist, fascist, big government people, they always love to push the limit. They're really trying to break our will and make us submit to anything.
Certainly are. Yeah. No, I agree entirely with your analysis about, socialists, communists, fascists. They are all part of the same instinct. That this is ultimately the battle we're fighting between libertarians like you and me, I should think your listeners, and people who want to control stuff. They're going to increasingly try and shut us down. They're going to find ways of controlling the internet. They're going to find ways of controlling talk radio. And we're going to have to fight for this stuff.
And by the way, they're now proposing this. This isn't just a few academics a decade ago talking about it. This is all over the news, and they're calmly putting it forward, saying, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to start taxing alternative news sites and giving it to the old line newspapers. I mean, that was actually proposed last week by the Federal Trade Commission. That is absolute robbery.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, this is what they do. They're going to use money and power to try and destroy us. You know, we are the X-wing fighter pilots fighting against the Death Star, and the Death Star is very big, and Darth Vader is in charge. You know, this is a tough battle we've got.
Well,
to
I
fight.
guess that's like the BBC, where they don't fund James Delingpole to write for a private newspaper, but they tax everyone to pay for BBC brainwashing.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that point. Yeah, we have to pay annual license fee. I've forgotten what it is now. It's over it's about getting on for $200 in order to fund an organization which promotes a view of the world which is essentially of the liberal left. You know, no organization has been pushing harder for AGW, man-made global warming, than the BBC.